Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we wish to welcome you in. I've been noticing on social media lately that a lot of people are going on about their rights. Now, this is nothing unusual. People always like to go on about their rights on Facebook. And funnily enough, they try to direct their rights at Facebook. Now, it is true. You do have the right to life and liberty. And depending on whether you're north or south of the border, you either have the right north of the border to security of the person or south of the border to the pursuit of happiness. So we can agree on life and liberty. But while these are rights, they're not absolute rights. For example, despite the fact I happen to have the right to life and liberty, I don't have the right to walk into the police station and go talking to the prisoners. They're going to justifiably have questions for me about why I'm there and what I'm doing. It's technically a violation of my liberty, but it's also a violation of the prisoner's right to happiness or to security of the person. They might not want to see me, so the policeman, to enforce everybody's rights, would check me, make sure I have a valid reason to be there, and that I wasn't bringing in guns, drugs, or anything like that. The same is true with businesses. I see a lot of people saying if a business stops them and asks them to take their temperature or something, they're going to sue under their right to liberty. Now, whether you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, and I grant you have the right to life and liberty, the business also has the right to life and liberty and security of the person or pursuit of happiness for all their employees. And it is their responsibility to protect their employees and their customers. So let's not involve the current pandemic at all. Let's pretend you're drunk. You're on drugs. You're obviously operating in an unsafe manner. And you walk in, let's pick on McDonald's, because there's a McDonald's virtually everywhere. And you stumble your way up to the counter, lean on, like drunks and druggies do, where they're waving back and forth. You say, I want 3 cheeseburgers, and what's your number, lady? And the cashier would probably say something like, 1 moment, sir, and go get their manager. The manager would decide it's not in the business's best interest to serve you, because the business has to protect itself. And while you're there on their property, they are responsible for your conduct. So, with a pandemic, with being drunk, with just being a regular person coming in, they have the right to determine whether or not they're going to serve you. Now, they can't arbitrarily dismiss you. They can't say they're not going to serve you because you're a certain race or a certain religion that wears a visible headdress or outfit or anything like that. That is wrong. That violates your rights. But if it's something that they believe is unsafe, then they have the absolute right to refuse you service. The pandemic is a really sticky issue at the present time. So like I said, I'm going to leave the whole pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine debate for another podcast, simply because I am undecided. But like I said, I can understand a business owner's right to decide whether they're going to allow that inside their business. Personally, I have found it outstanding how many people have been willing to go along and wear masks and follow the arrows and all this sort of thing. This would have never been accepted even 5 years ago. And I kind of expect it won't be followed in the future. But among the good things that have happened is that cashiers now have plastic shields between themselves and the customers. That is way, way overdue. those poor cashiers, male, female, teenager, adult, manager, whatever it might be, take an inordinate amount of abuse. And in that situation, just because you're being verbally aggressive towards an employee, the manager does have the right to not serve you and to remove you. Technically, this infringes on your right to life and liberty, but it's also infringing on the rights to life and liberty for the employees and the other patrons in the establishment. So the manager, and I'm picking on the manager here, has to make the decision for the majority. Does one person's rights outweigh everybody else's rights? And unfortunately, it is a numbers game. When it boils down to it, how many people are going to be affected by your decision? If I had Ebola, we would all agree it's not a good idea for me to go shopping. Although I believe with Ebola symptoms, I wouldn't be going around shopping. The pandemic, precisely because it's gone so far so quickly and done so much damage, has engendered compromise and controversy. Businesses are trying to catch up. But like I said, the plastic shield in front of cashiers is a good thing. I didn't think I would like it, but then when I got there, I realized all the people who've been abusive to cashiers, and I've had to step in, or another customer or manager, all those years. At least it's a physical separation so that the cashiers can feel safe. And that's what it's about, safety. You might have rights, but your safety comes first. This is why I can't walk into a local factory, grab a forklift, and start stacking things. Despite the fact I'm very good with a forklift, and I have an extensive knowledge of Red Prairie and all sorts of systems to organize, the business would say, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm just going to restack everything." Well, you don't have the right to be on our property, because the business does have the right to their property, whether they're leasing it or whether they're buying it, whether it's bought and owned. So the business has rights. The owner of the business has rights. The employee of the business have rights. So it does come down to a numbers game, and that's the way it'll play out in court. You'll go in there and you'll claim, "I have a right to liberty to go where I want." And the current political climate does not favor you. It wasn't so long ago in the 1960s that black people didn't have the right to drink out of the same fountains as white people. And it came down to a numbers game then. People stood up and said, "There's no logical reason for us to be doing this. It's nonsense." And they threw it out, and black people got the same rights. No more segregation. Now, the country I'm in, the segregation was not so overt, but I'm not denying racism exists. So we agree racism is not an acceptable reason to refuse to provide somebody with service. But we can agree if somebody walks in drunk, intoxicated, on drugs, whatever you want to say, or is acting in an aggressive manner, does not deserve to be served, whether they're buying a donut or whether they're buying a car. It's simply not safe to be interacting with somebody who's got a hairpin trigger. That is up to the business to decide. Unions negotiate exactly this in their contracts with employers, that an employee can refuse unsafe work to protect their personal safety. But it's the union as a whole that negotiates that. As an individual worker, you have that right, but then you have to go through whatever your local safety board is, and it's a long, difficult fight. That's why a lot of people get injured, because they don't think to fight for their rights. That being said, like I said, if I walk into a random business and grab one of their tow motors and driving the forklift around, I'm just banging into stuff, they have every right to eject me from their premises. It is a violation of my right to life and liberty, but I'm violating so many people's right to safety and their right to life that it's all a matter of perspective. We're all a little shaken by the pandemic right now. We're all a little bit antsy Some of us are deciding not to take the vaccine. Some of us have already gotten our second dose. And there's so much confusion in the world, and it's going to take some time to sort out. It won't be anytime soon. We have to be patient for another year or two for things to die down, quite literally. I've seen some rather extreme comments on the internet about how the vaccine is going to kill everybody that took it, and there's this scientist, I forget his name at the present time, who supposedly said this out loud. He's been a discredited scientist, unfortunately. He did amazing work in discovering the HIV virus. But at the same token, he's kind of old, he's kind of out of touch, and the scientific consensus doesn't back him up. Have scientists been wrong before? Absolutely. And there's a lot of questions to be asked about the vaccine. That being said, it was a necessary first step. We could have gone on the way things were, got everybody infected, and had a plague 10 times worse. As it is, I still think we're going to see another wave around September. I'm watching, and there's a few spikes of the Indian variant, as it's called, B point something whatever, and supposedly it's not affected by the vaccine. But until we can get things under control, even I, with my dedication to rights, am recognizing, you know what? My rights don't trump other people's rights. My rights have to synchronize with other people's rights. I have the right to security of the person or the pursuit of happiness. Well, my friend just down the road has a beautiful car. It would make me happy to drive it. I should be at liberty to drive it, but he owns it. And out of respect for his property, I wouldn't steal it. So just because you have a right to something doesn't mean you're allowed to do it. And that's the principle of law in society. We have laws, some of which are unjust, but we have to obey them to have a functioning society. So be careful about when you want to appeal to your rights. You do have the right to life and liberty, no questions asked, but you have the right to your life and your liberty. You cannot infringe on anybody else's right to life and liberty, even if they believe wrong. That is their right. And I disagree with a lot of people's beliefs. I also agree with a lot of people's beliefs. But not infringing on other people's rights is our primary responsibility. So instead of getting all uppity and saying, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, just don't go to the business. If it offends you that much that they're going to take your temperature, don't go. Retain your right to life, retain your right to liberty, and don't infringe on other people's. There's going to be a lot of businesses that don't do squat. They're not going to take your temperature. They're going to give you a seat. You don't have a mask? That's okay. Come on over here. We got a separate booth for you. And that's how businesses make their money. They take advantage where other businesses don't. But if you're in a business, you got to respect the laws of the business. And remember, it's not only your rights that count, it's the rights of the 7.5 billion people on this planet and how we can best serve everybody's rights. We need to do a better job of protecting everybody's rights, particularly in countries that are not Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. But that's a stop topic for another time. For now, remember your rights, absolutely. Keep them close to your heart. But at the same time, other people have rights. Don't trample on their rights. We wish to thank you for joining us for the Silverlight Show. If you want to support the show, like, subscribe, and share. If you have the chance, we have ebooks available at 99 cents each. We literally cannot price them any lower. Physical copies are also available. Buying one really helps the channel out. And most importantly, as always, we hope everyone has a good day.